a novel about secret occult history, written from uncovered family documents. In the mid-19th century, there lived a man by the name of Harold Oldrey, perhaps the greatest monster hunter of all time. The heir to a line of Paladin knights, all serving in a clandestine Catholic order of hunters and exorcists that stretched back to the Crusades. In his pursuit of a demonic specter known as the Burned Woman, Harold's church superiors ignored his belief that she meant to reenact the 10th plague of Egypt. His only possible ally was a Celtic witch deeply connected to the druid magic of her ancestors. But she was held prisoner in his order's dungeon for the lies believed about her people. With no other options, Harold elected to break the witch, named Brigid, free from her cell, and they fled the church order, trekking together through the wilderness, eventually receiving aid from an unfulfilled nun, the Fae beings of Brigid's religion, and old church allies still loyal to Harold. The group pressed for the mythic Blakulla Island, where it is said the devil holds court. Here they would face satanic cultists, summon demons, infernal hybrids of men and devils, and the Dark One himself, the old breed, Haxon. The harrowing story of Harold Oldrey, born into the Catholic Sons of Men order of monster slayers, dating back to the Crusades. He was a third-generation paladin, following his father and grandfather of the fraternal order dating back to Charlemagne. Their work was the hunting of supernatural threats to mankind, including vampires, various different types of werewolves, demons from the pit of hell, and the many other unnatural horrors that haunted and plagued humanity. After being sent to Africa to train more paladins, only to see them essentially sacrificed against the most powerful adversaries, Harold became disillusioned with the order, a fact that led the leadership to send him woefully unprepared against a new threat, reanimated, semi-mechanical monstrosities. The ensuing fallout led to Harold losing the Paladins' power and turning to more traditional means of hunting. However, the church's treatment of women accused of witchcraft proved a final straw, leading Harold to partner with a Celtic druid as the two marched against an army of demonic cultists, gathered together on the mythical Blakulla Island, where the devil is said to hold court on Earth. Their adventure inspired elements of the silent movie Haxan. Brigid, the Celtic witch that changed the Oldreys forever. She was deeply connected to the ancient druid magic of her people, often communing with spirits of nature, and even able to work with various Fae beings, which at times in her youth led to attention from much darker entities as well. Her people believed she bore a powerful connection to her namesake goddess, possibly being her living avatar on Earth. This connection and resulting powers led to her imprisonment by the Catholic Sons of Men order of exorcists and hunters. However, one hunter, my ancestor Harold Oldrey, sought out her help from within the order's dungeon. The leadership continued to fail the exorcism of a young girl, and Harold was willing to try anything. Brigid succeeded with the aid of the dangerous Fae entities she had known her whole life, leading Harold to break away from the church, freeing Brigid and fleeing with her, in the hopes of using her powerful ancient magic in his continuing fight against the demonic creatures and satanic cultists gathering to commune with the devil in his court on Blakulla Island. Rather than the stereotyped witches Harold expected, the majority of cultists were much more like the clergy of the church, inspiring his grandson's work on the film Haxan, as well as my own in the novel I've written about Harold's experience. Blakulla Island, Sweden, said to be the site of the devil's earthly court, as well as the most harrowing Halloween night in history. As told in multiple witch-hunting guides, here the devil would appear, a contradiction of demonic horror, often dressed in fine linens. The island was accessible only to witches, flying on brooms, fence posts, livestock, even the bodies of sleeping men. The court involved a feast where the devil's most esteemed witch brides would sit closest to him, while all pricked their fingers and signed his book in blood. The island, now called Bloodjungfrun, exists as a cultural site to this day. My ancestor, the hunter Harold Oldrey, went to the island, along with a Celtic druid which he freed from church imprisonment. They stood against the true satanic cultists, who who had long made scapegoats of women accused of witchcraft. This is an antique photograph of a man made into a demon, a reward bestowed to him after a decades-long career in the study of dark occult practices. Years spent in ancient grimoires and in service to godlike dark entities. I want to note that the vast majority of those accused of these practices were actually innocent victims of persecution, scapegoated by close-minded bigots of their times, and that Anton LaVey's modern satanic temple is a political entity that does not actually believe in the biblical devil it is named for. But don't be fooled. The actual worship of dark demonic entities goes back thousands of years, continuing at least into the too recent past. A common practice in many of these cults is the binding of dark energies and spirits into small idols to pass on to others. My ancestors locked away several of these cursed items to keep others safe from them. Just one small part of my families and their storied allies work against those who worship the darkness. Those who truly worship devils could summon various forms of demonic creatures, interbreed with them to create cambions, and sometimes be made into devils themselves. A human-demon hybrid, captured on film, the result of human cultists interbreeding with physical demonic creatures, either born of hell or remade in its image. A popular character archetype in horror fiction across various mediums of pop culture. The truth is closer to its mythological counterparts. Many have suggested the Nephilim, the biblical race of giants said to be the offspring of men and fallen angels. And while the descriptions are not wholly dissimilar, those keeping it made no reference to angelic beings. It strikes me much more like the mythic Cambion, said to be the offspring of humans with any number of demonic entities. A deeper connection comes in its reference in the Malleus Maleficarum, which my ancestor called a mostly abominable book housing a handful of secret truths, such as the horrid beast created in the union of men and other worldly beings. Deep within the thick stone walls of St. George's Keep, the demon hybrid was the most feared creature of all. While most of the other prisoners of the keep were eventually broken into a semi-docile state, the guards tread especially carefully around it, having lost many brothers. From what little I know, this creature was instrumental in the keep's eventual ruin, and may possibly stalk the area to this day.
Haxon, more commonly described as hags or beldams, but Haxon is how my ancestors and their associates referred to them. Harold called this book a dreadful profanity piled over top a quarter-dozen necessary truths. A specific marked-off section describes the entity. A Haxon is a witch that sold her soul, eventually tried and executed for their crimes, and resurrected back into the world by their master as a horrid undead monster. The burned woman was a particularly nasty Haxon, an undead witch reported reaping terror across Central Europe in the mid-1850s. According to the investigation of my third great-grandfather Harold Oldrey, she had been a nun in life, but was targeted early on by her own parish priest, who secretly worked in service to the devil. Continued physical and spiritual abuse pushed her into Satan's service as well, under the point of selling her own soul. After many years of such service, her horrible deeds were discovered. She was summarily burned at the stake. Not one of her executors lived to see another week. He wrote that stopping her would have been impossible, if not for Brigid, the Celtic witch he believed to be the avatar of her namesake goddess.
The fair folk, Faeries, the Fae, just like humans, can range from valuable allies to dangerous, terrifying menaces. My family holds a deep history with both sides of these mystical beings, long working hand in hand with some, while actively hunting down others. Some of the more kind among them assist us to this very day against our remaining enemies, thanks to a long-held bond with a Celtic witch said to be the avatar of the goddess Brigid, who shared her name. According to my ancestors' writings, she gifted us with Brigid's blessing, a seed that grew into this fairy tree, a plant that in myth serves as a home to the Fae and a portal to their world. From here they've delivered me protection, as well as more basic gifts, shown themselves as phantom lights, inexplicably out-of-place livestock, and other strange pure white animals. I've also inherited the tools to combat the malicious of them, including mysterious herbs, bells, hag stones, and curved sharpened pieces of iron, as well as antique photographs of both the hobgoblin and changeling once held in St. George's Keep, the Sons of Man's secret dungeon of monsters. The Fae remain one of the more active supernatural phenomena in modern times, still roaming in the wild parts of the world. My ancestor Harold Oldrey's final paladin apprentice was his most trusted confidant, an African man hailing from what is modern Niger, at a time when paladins from the African continent were becoming increasingly common, a first for the centuries-old order, which dated back to Charlemagne. When the Sons of Man missionaries arrived in Africa, they immediately noticed the population's propensity for spiritual strength, a virtue central to the order of paladins. An older boy watched as Harold, alone with his sword, slew the Sasabansum, monstrous creatures terrorizing the tribe. The boy, and many others, soon enlisted for training. He gained a reputation for being the best, and took the name Samuel, after the biblical prophet, and surname Ravenson, for the birds that seemed to watch over him. According to Harold's writings, what happened next was the beginning of his falling out with the Sons of Man. As soon as they were trained, the Order's leadership used the African paladins uniquely against the most dangerous targets. A year later, more than half of them were dead. Because of this, Harold swore an oath to never train another paladin again. He would march none more to their memorials. Despite this, Harold wrote that Samuel and his own apprentice were the only ones to aid he and Brigid in their march on Blakulla Island to stop the devil and his servants. A Victorian-era monster slayer, increasingly disillusioned with the ancient Catholic order he was born into. A Celtic druid witch unjustly held prisoner by the same, supposedly righteous group, and a string of failed exorcisms in rapid succession, all lead to an unprecedented church jailbreak, and the two's trek across Europe, receiving aid from a nun who's grown bored and unsatisfied with her position. The two embark on a perilous journey, encountering the fair folk, satanic, devil-worshipping cultists, swarms of monstrous demons, dark witches twisted into horrific creatures called Haxan by their contracts with the devil. It all culminates on the mythical island of Blakulla, Sweden. The fate of every firstborn in Europe depends on the two, driving and thwarting the cultists in time. A tale steeped in ancient Abrahamic, Celtic, and other mythologies, as well as the European tradition of monster and vampire hunters. This is the story of my ancestors' life in this world. The old breed, Haxon,